Khorne is known as the Blood God, the angry and murderous Lord of Battle. It is said to be the warrior god whose rage echoes through time and space, reaching back to the first act of violence committed by one mortal against another. For millennia, devotees of the ruinous powers have argued over the first beginning of the Blood God. Some hold that Khorne's will first moved a primitive being to seize a rock and brain one of his fellows in murderous rage. In that telling, this first act began the spiral of violence that fed the Chaos God into the terrible force that now afflicts the galaxy. Others say it was the first mortal impulses of fury that gave life to Khorne. In that belief, Khorne represents the primitive lust for violence that waits inside every mortal heart, yet the true disciples of Khorne have no care for such debates, because their hands are already turned to slaying whatever comes within reach. There are as many sources of conflict as there are beings in the universe. Jealousy, rage, sport, hunger, political advantage, territory, possessions, and the simple thirst for domination all breed conflict in their own way. It cannot be escaped because there has never been a time or place completely free from it. Even races that call themselves enlightened and peaceful cannot escape this basic truth. Without conflict, their progress would halt, and challenging new ideas would be left unconsidered. Conflict is not limited to simple personal struggle, because its victims and its beneficiaries can appear on far greater scales. Systems of government, whole cultures, and entire civilizations can be destroyed by stronger ones. Such ruin may come as easily as a Chaos Space Marine reaching out with a power fist and crushing the frail frame of a grot. Through conflict, the mighty rise and the weak fall, and at its most basic level, one thing survives at the expense of another. Despite its self-destructive nature, Khorne is openly the most potent and active of all the Chaos Gods. Endless wars and bloodshed in the mortal realm feed it with the skulls of the slain. Those offerings are constantly drawn down into the gods' raging depths. Khorne needs no honeyed promises or complicated plots to draw mortals toward its realm. The anger and fury just beneath the civilized manor is often enough. The path to Khorne's domain can be as slippery as any path offered by the subtler, ruinous powers. The instinct for violence is a necessary thing in a hostile universe. It is praised in those seen as protectors or liberators. Many societies must literally fight to survive, and they celebrate their members for defending themselves and others. Khorne's conflict carried to its most violent extreme. Because of that, Khorne is eternal and omnipresent. In all places, across every era and every intelligent species, its influence has been felt by all. Its attention has touched the outcome of almost every antagonistic confrontation that reaches from a disagreement between two angry scribes to the galaxy-crushing battles of the Horus Heresy, from the Skull Throne beyond the illusion of reality where mortal beings live and die. Khorne reaches toward the greatest conflicts. It pushes those conflicts onward and encourages them to grow. It drives men and women to take from rivals what those rivals lack the strength to keep. Where expanding civilizations lay competing claims to new resources, the blood god fans the flames of discord. When a brother grows jealous of his sibling's position, Khorne heats the blood and the envy toward boiling. Conflict is embraced as possessions are claimed, resources are seized, and brothers are slain. Through it all, blood flows to Khorne, and it laughs as its power grows. The blood god is often seen as a broad and muscular humanoid, standing hundreds of feet tall. Khorne bears the face of a savage, snarling dog, yet those twisted features are almost hidden beneath a baroque helm. The helm is decorated with the skulls of conqueror kings, resting over a figure shaped for endless war. Khorne is often spoken of as he, with the masculine gender, but this is only how followers describe the god. Like all the Chaos gods, Khorne is an entity made from psychic energy and in truth has no gender. Its great body is made even more unnatural by heavy plates of armor formed from brass and blackened iron. Every word from Khorne is a growl of endless fury, and its roars of bloodlust echo through its realm. The blood god broods from a throne of carved brass, set high upon a mountain of skulls. Those pale trophies are the fleshless heads of its champions, stacked together with the skulls of those they defeated. 100,000 species are found within that rising heap of bone. Human heads lie there beyond counting, beside Tyranids' skulls as large as Hive City Heb blocks. The pile keeps growing with the victories of Khorne's followers, feeding the god's glory without easing its thirst for blood and death. Beside Khorne rests a great two-handed sword, a legendary blade feared by many intelligent species. They know it by names such as Woebringer, Warmaker, and the end of all things. It is said that when Khorne lifts this sword, one sweep can cut through reality itself. Through that wound, the demonic blood legions of Khorne can spill into the materium. Khorne's disciples believe that the brass throne rises above skulls in the middle of a sea of blood. To them, these are the remains of countless followers slain in battle and the multitudes killed in the god's name. The skulls and blood are also described as belonging to all victims slain by the cult of Khorne. Others say the skulls belong to all those slain by Khorne's champions, and to the champions who have also died. The mountain slowly climbs ever higher beneath the throne. By some accounts, a great forge waits at its base, where weapons and armor are made for Khorne's mortal and demonic servants. These followers hold that Khorne embodies mindless and absolute violence. They see in the god a wild bloodlust that wants to destroy everyone within reach, whether friend or foe. True believers of this kind are few, and their number grows smaller as the devoted gladly send one another into Khorne's embrace. They know that Khorne cares not from where the blood flows. Depictions of Khorne often show a titanic armored figure, covered from head to foot in strange alien plates. The armor is usually carved with a repeating skull motif, worked again and again across its surface. Its head is covered by a great winged helm, with a bestial snarling face beneath it. In most images, Khorne carries a rune-covered sword or axe, held as a sign of endless slaughter. In more primitive cultures, the god is shown more simply, with only fists or claw-like hands. Even then, the image remains one of brute force, remembered through armor, rage, and blood. Why Khorne is bound to the number 8 is unknown, but the bond has existed since the warp first echoed with the god's fury. Its affinity for that figure, and for all of its multiples, appears throughout the order of its demons. It shapes the blood legions, from the ranks of bloodthirsters to the cohorts of a full-strength legion. The number also appears within the blood god's domain in the Imperium. 8 enormous towers ring the brass citadel, standing around it like marks of devotion. When a Khorneate Daemon is slain in real space, it must complete 8 tasks before Khorne gives it shape again. In the greatest and most sprawling battles within the warp, Khorne's 8th wave is always the strongest. Mortal worshippers also recognize and revere the sacred number. They use it in blood-soaked summoning rituals and carve it into their flesh during gruesome ceremonies. The seers of many species have foretold a final meaning for the number. Only after 8 ages of war have passed, they say, will Khorne's thirst for blood be slaked. That ending is imagined through one last apocalyptic battle, after ages of violence have already gone by. The deep conflicts of mortal life sustain Khorne in a simple and constant way. They feed it as bread and water might feed a creature of flesh. Yet a mortal body still hungers for richer food, and Khorne hungers for greater conflict. It does not remain content with small quarrels or distant border disputes. Khorne is a god, and the hunger of a god is terrible and without end. The worship of Khorne has taken many forms across the long lives of mortal cultures. Primitive human peoples have followed it since they first hunted game and made war upon their neighbors. Many did not know that the being they honored was the blood god itself. Some did not even think of it as a god. To them, it was a force of nature to appease, or a spirit to persuade. In such cultures, Khorne may be imagined as a great beast moving through shadow. It may be seen as a dark mastiff with burning eyes, always searching for prey. To ask for the aid of that spirit could mean a better hunt. It could also mean a bloody victory against another clan. Humans are not the only beings who walk this blood-soaked path. Khorne's favor may also come to brutal orcs, even with orc and mork of their own. Fierce Nickali mercenaries and bloodthirsty Rakghoul hunters can serve the Lord of Skulls. Any warrior from any intelligent species may serve that purpose if they pledge blood and skulls to their master. In return, Khorne gives strength to their arms and rage to their hearts. Even deep inside Imperial space, some may turn toward Khorne without understanding it. On hive worlds, Dangs fight one another for territory and supplies. At times, they may call upon a deadly assassin to remove a powerful rival gang leader at the command of their temple's leadership. Such an assassin may ask for a divine hand. That hand is meant to guide the dagger across the throat of the chosen target. By praying for aid in murder, the assassin risks drawing the notice of Khorne. The Lord of Murder may hear that prayer, even when another name was spoken. The assassin's masters may understand what their servants have become. They may also believe they are sacrificing to some other deity. Some may simply not care who receives the blood, as long as the temple gains power and influence. Khorne gives its help, and then claims the blood as payment. Whatever need drives someone toward it, and whatever name or form they use, one constant remains. That constant is blood, and above all else, Khorne seeks its spilling. Through murder, slaughter, and war, the servants of the blood god tear apart their enemies. Across thousands of worlds, they stain the soil with crimson gore in Khorne's name. Nothing pleases Khorne more than the free flow of sanguine life force. It gives the god power, sustains it, and helps its influence spread. Those who worship Khorne must keep the blood flowing without pause. Khorne does not care from where the blood flows, only that it does. A follower who fails to bring enough blood may become the next offering. Their blood is drunk, their soul is consumed, and their skull is cast aside. It joins the vast mountain of bones that surrounds the throne of skulls. Khorne's influence is a steady tide of aggression across the mortal world. It pushes living beings toward brutality, murder, and bloodshed. Yet this alone cannot satisfy the Lord of Battle. Small acts and hidden violence cannot keep the rivers of its realm filled with blood. They cannot raise its throne higher upon the mound of skulls. Those smaller acts cannot feed the boundless rage at the core of Khorne's being. Khorne demands slaughter on the scale of planets. It demands the murder of entire species, and most of all, it demands battle without end. Constant and merciless warfare is needed to gather the blood and skulls that feed a god. All intelligent species wage war upon their rivals, even those who speak of unity and enlightenment. Those who will not submit to another's greater good are brought down by armed force. For reluctant soldiers, war is a duty done for a higher cause. It is treated as a road toward peace, but many come to love the road itself. For those who serve Khorne, war needs no purpose beyond the act of war. To split a head with a chain axe and feel blood strike the hand is already reward enough. That act becomes a compulsion, and killing calls for more killing. Blood demands more blood, and devotion to Khorne becomes a life of brutal destruction. Such a life is broken only by the need to gather strength for the next assault. A single rage-filled man may kill only a few before he falls. When hundreds or thousands gather together, cities and planets begin to shake in fear. Armies of Khorne's devoted worshippers descend upon a world with one purpose. They come to reap skulls and spill blood for their master. To the armies that show the greatest devotion, immense gifts of war may be granted. Huge demon engines and weapons of incalculable destructive power are given to those with the largest body counts. The doom warders of these chosen forces rain gravedigger shells upon terrified people. Beneath that falling death, ranks of frenzied warriors tear into a planet as though it were alive. Orbital defenses are smashed, cities are razed, and enemy war machines are destroyed. When the way has been cleared, the killing can begin in earnest. Destruction from ranged weapons is only a beginning. where each kill feeds the greater slaughter. No captives are taken, and no lives are spared by the armies of Khorne. The blood god does not accept mercy. Streets become rivers of blood, and bones break beneath the boots of those advancing. With every step, the armies of Khorne drive themselves toward greater carnage. At first, pistols are put away in favor of chain swords and power axes. Blades bite deep into chests and necks, tearing through the flesh of terrified enemy soldiers. The resistance of that flesh brings grim satisfaction to the one who strikes. Soon, even that feeling is no longer enough for the warriors of Khorne. They need to feel fresh blood pumping from hearts onto their skin. They need to rejoice in snapping arms and torn flesh, where jagged bone protrusions cause new wounds. In such moments, Khorne and its followers reach a kind of communion. It is the closest thing the blood god knows to being satisfied. That feeling does not last, and when it fades, Khorne bellows in rage. Its followers are driven to gather again and prepare for the next assault. The warfare continues, and the killing does not end. Even within Khorne's own realm, the blood god's domain, there is still war. Enemies rarely appear there, yet the conflict continues without them. The generals of Khorne's blood legions are the mighty bloodthirsters. They led bloodletters, fleshhounds, and other demons into battle against one another. They sharpen their brutal skill, even as their blades are dulled against Daemon armor. Axes cut into unnatural flesh in a constant storm of destruction. Limbs are severed, chests are pierced on horns, and faces are torn apart by teeth and claws. When a battle ends, the wrecked bodies of the fallen are crushed underfoot. Others are thrown into great bottomless chasms, and the battlefield rests only for a short time. It remains still only until fresh legions can gather for the next battle. Then the battle cries rise again, and war begins once more. The only pause belongs to the furnace demons working in the forges. They create weapons for the blood legions to carry into battle, whether in Khorne's realm or in the material world. Khorne is known as the Blood God, a furious and murderous god of chaos. Its rage is said to echo through the corridors of time and space, with bellows that seem without limit. In the realm of chaos, its great brass throne rests upon a mountain of skulls. Around it lies a plain of broken bone and lakes of mortal blood formed from the dead of battle. That blood comes from followers slain in war, and from those killed by Khorne's minions in its name. Khorne embodies mindless and absolute violence, striking down friend and enemy alike. To those drawn into its worship, murder and rage are not merely tools of war. They become the act itself, repeated for the sake of bloodshed. The followers of Khorne are ferocious warriors, and they do not use psychic powers. The blood god hates the trickery of magic and despises cowardly sorcerers. Its hatred is especially fixed upon the servants of Sinch, whose path is far from Khorne's direct and brutal way. Men and women turn to Khorne when they seek the power to conquer. They ask for strength to defeat enemies, to take vengeance, and to gain unmatched skill in battle. The most devoted among them understand what lies beneath those promises. Khorne truly desires constant slaughter, carried on wildly and without end. It does not matter to Khorne where the blood comes from. The only thing that matters is that it keeps flowing. This call reaches many mortals, especially humans who hunger for battle and power over others. Among the fertile and feudal worlds of the Imperium of Man, primitive and primal tribes are especially drawn to Khorne's worship. Khorne's followers are almost always uncontrollable fighters, devoted to the act of killing. They share their god's simple view of war and prefer to charge straight into their foes. In close melee, they can make the blood flow more freely. Their frenzy leaves little room for tactics or defense, because blood matters more than caution. Those who seek sorcery or hidden tricks look elsewhere for a patron. Khorne frowns deeply upon such paths, and those who pursue the magical arts may turn instead to Sinch. Unlike the other Chaos gods, Khorne's followers do not spend great effort raising temples in its honor. They worship on the battlefield, crying out phrases such as blood for the blood god and skulls for the skull throne. When no other battle waits before them, Khorne's followers may attack one another in its praise. At times, they do this even when other battles are already being fought. It is said that Khorne is the easiest Chaos god to worship. Other gods may demand rituals, altars, and sacrifices, but Khorne demands fresh blood and skulls gathered in its name. Those favored by Khorne often receive its chaos blessings in the form of mutations. Some are given great strength or a beast-like face that marks their change. Others develop horns, claws, or rending talons. Whatever form these mutations take, Khorneate warriors display them proudly as signs of the blood god's existence. These changes also serve as inspiration to those who have not yet earned Khorne's favor. Among all who serve the blood god, the World Eater's Traitor Legion is dedicated solely to Khorne and its cause. Their devotion belongs to the shedding of blood and to the defeat of every enemy before them. The worship of Khorne speaks most clearly to warriors and soldiers. It also calls to others in military lives and to anyone who feels weak or powerless. For such people, Khorne offers the strength to exert their will. It grants vitality and combat prowess, especially in physical and melee combat. Yet every gift draws the soul further into Khorne's corruption. The deeper a person falls into its brand of chaos, the more bloodlust takes hold. Anger and wrath grow harder to control, until only the taking of a life brings even brief relief. That relief does not last, and the hunger soon returns again. Khorneates may revel in the power that bloodlust gives them. They may also welcome the mutational gifts that sharpen their ability to fight. Yet those same urges become increasingly uncontrollable, demanding worse and worse acts of violence. Even a semblance of control requires killing, and the calm after bloodshed fades quickly. Over time, long-term Khorneates become screaming creatures of adrenaline and aggression. They will do anything to slaughter other living beings long after reason has been pushed aside. What remains is a mindless thirst for murder, violence, and savagery. Their path leads them toward the form of berserkers in one shape or another. Most Khornates favor melee weapons, with axes held above ranged weapons in their worship of battle. Blades give a more visceral experience than firearms or directed energy weapons. They also reject psychic powers and psychic sorcery as dishonorable. To them, such arts show physical weakness, far from killing up close and personal. The weakness of Khorneate battle tactics is that they essentially have none. They trust their ferocity and melee skill to keep them alive long enough to reach the enemy. Very often, that is enough for them to tear their foes apart. In the end, their only concern is to spill more blood and take more lives for the blood god. They will gladly sacrifice their own lives to feed Khorne's eternal appetite for slaughter. Khorne cares little whose lives are claimed in the end. What matters is that the blood continues to flow and that its savage hunger is never left unfed. In the great game of the Chaos Gods, Khorne holds its deepest hatred for Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure. To Khorne, the self-indulgent sensuality of the Prince of Chaos offends every warrior instinct it embodies. The Lord of Battle dreams of closing its scarlet fingers around Slaanesh's soft neck. In that imagined moment, the younger god's depraved cries of pleasure would slowly turn into agony before ending in silence. Part of Khorne's existence is fed by duty, honor, and self-sacrifice. To the followers of Slaanesh, those things are an anathema and stand against their own path of self-indulgent pleasure-seeking. Because of this, the Dominic servants of Khorne and Slaanesh often fall upon each other as soon as they meet. Their mortal followers are often just as ready to enter battle, drawn into the same bitter hatred. Yet Khorne also has little respect for Sinch, the arch-conspirator. The constant schemes of its brother god enrage Khorne, and the patronage of sorcerers deepens that old antipathy. Sinch favors ambitious manipulators who strike from shadows rather than warriors who meet their enemies in open battle. This keeps the followers of Khorne and Sinch in frequent conflict, even when their purposes briefly touch. When the chance for bloodletting is great, Khorne and Sinch can still make a common cause. In those moments, Sinch's unguessable schemes may be advanced through their shared efforts. At such times, the star of chaos waxes strong in the mortal realm. The two most potent of the ruinous powers join forces for a while, sending their demonic legions to war. These mercurial pacts rarely last for long before old nature returns. Khorne's berserk disciples, or Sinch's manipulators, inevitably turn upon the allies they had only briefly accepted. Beyond the daemon-filled battlefields of the blood god's domain, there is more than blood-soaked ground and endless war. This is Khorne's home in the realm of chaos, where violence and despair move beside any soul cursed to wander there. One foreboding hellscape gives way to another, each one darker than the last. At the heart of the realm, Khorne watches from its skull throne and surveys the lands below. Its forces are set against whatever foe is near, whether demons of its own kind or invaders who come seeking doomed war. The blood god's domain is unlike any other realm. Storms rage forever across crimson skies and their winds seem made of pure rage. Those winds tear into stone and blood-drenched earth, then cast the broken land hundreds of leagues away. The land does not receive this violence in silence. Earthquakes send molten brass into the sky, burning away storm clouds until the winds gather again. New mountains rise from flat ground in an instant, some like gigantic living swords and others like shields before the storm. Rivers of boiling blood cross the hellish land and divide it into territories of war. Rival bloodthirsters fight over these lands, yet the rivers do not leave conquest still. From deep below, new crimson flows break through the surface and split the ground open. Each river pulls down whatever once stood in its place, including demonic legions that may have marched there. The land answers by pressing the riverbanks inward again. Brass-spewing volcanoes pour liquid metal into the blood, sealing the wounds with burning fury. Every part of this realm fights to destroy the others. Stone, river, wind, and fire all seem like living servants of Khorne. Each one seeks to prove itself worthy before the master of the land. A visitor would know that every rock and every breeze is an enemy. Even each drop of what should be water would seem hungry for death. To see this realm is to understand that conflict is not only a curse upon men, machines, and aliens, but a living truth that breathes eternally. At the outer edge of the Blood God's domain stands a ring of volcanoes called Khorne's Rage. They rise hundreds of kilometers into the air, throwing black smoke and molten brass upward. Together they form a border that cannot be seen through or safely crossed. Darkness and ash hang around these peaks, lit from below by flame. Within the ash clouds, bloodstorms turn and gather. Red lightning moves through the clouds, and thunder rolls like a bloodthirster's whip, followed by charging juggernauts. The volcanoes stand as a bastion against those who would enter the realm. Their toxic ash and scorching brass flows are enough to stop nearly any force. Those who still attempt the crossing meet more than heat, jagged stone, and choking smoke. The rock and brass of Khorne's Rage rise up against the attackers themselves. Pieces break from the mountain sides as molten brass pours through them like lifeblood. Demons of stone and liquid metal take form from rage and defiance. These defenders strike with mindless fury and plain violence. They bludgeon and scorch their enemies until the work is done. Then they fall back into lifeless piles, waiting until they are called to rise again. At the base of the volcanoes lie the forges of the lesser furnace demons. In those sweltering workshops, weapons of war are shaped for Khorne's eternal battles. Axes, swords, hammers, armor, and the components of demon engines all begin there. The great engines themselves are assembled elsewhere in the realm. Their blades, housings, and armaments still have their beginning at the foot of Khorne's Rage. Even here, danger is constant by the standards of an already merciless land. At any moment, a volcano may erupt and flood a forge with molten brass. If demons are burned away in such a mishap, Khorne shows no concern. Others rise from the blood pits to replace them. and the work continues without pause. The Furnace demons also use the dangers of the border to their own purpose. Across the battle plains, it is mostly Khorne's minions who fight and die. At the edges of the realm, other warriors suffer bloody and terrible deaths. With fiendish tools and forbidden rites, the masters of the Hell Forges enslave mortal souls. These are the souls of those who dared invade the Blood God's realm. They are fused into the anvils of Khorne and left to suffer there forever. Their screams mix with the ringing of each hammer strike. When white-hot metal is laid upon the anvil, the bound soul feels the scorching heat. So every new weapon and piece of armor is born beside the suffering of Khorne's enemies. Warp energy constantly moves across the realms of the greater Chaos Gods. It shifts like currents and eddies through the land, bringing mutation to whatever it touches. Most of the time, this raw power does not remain in one place for long. In the Blood God's treacherous domain, there are places where the power of the warp gathers. When it collects and stirs, great craters may be torn into the blasted plains. None can say whether such pits take moments or millennia to form. Time has no true meaning within the realm of chaos. Eventually, the warp storms break apart and sometimes seep into the pits they created. When this happens, Khorne commands its minions to gather blood from the mortal world. The harvest is carried out through the most violent and destructive methods they can bring to bear. The souls that die in such a campaign give their blood to a dark purpose. Their crimson essence gathers in the pit, where it mixes with molten brass and Khorne's murderous bile. From that mixture, a new blood pit is formed. It is from the blood pits that new Daemons of Khorne arise. Bloodletters, Furnace demons, and many lesser fiends emerge from blood touched by warp and bile. The soldiers born from a pit are charged with one duty from their first day. They must claim more blood to refill the pit until they fail their master in battle. When one pit finally runs dry, another storm soon begins to gather and the cycle starts again. The rivers of blood divide one region of Khorne's realm from another. They cut through the scorched land like jagged crimson scars. These flows stretch kilometers wide and carry the blood of those who fell in service to Khorne. Victims and followers alike feed these sanguine canals. Nearly all blood spilled on the gods' behalf upon the mortal plane finds its way there. The blood itself is so hot that it boils as it moves. Steam made from vaporized blood hangs over the rivers. It gives the surrounding regions a red cast that can almost be felt in the air. Along the surface, gigantic bubbles rise and carry remains from things lost below. When those bubbles burst, hot blood is thrown hundreds of feet upward. It falls back upon the shores in steaming splashes. The shapes left behind often resemble the spray from an opened artery. Thousands of blood rivers cross the land before they reach a bleak precipice. From that wall, they fall for kilometers in waterfalls of gore. At the base, the falling blood forms the Lake of Slaughter. The lake is larger than any ocean in the mortal realm. It is filled with creatures that cannot be. Leviathans of brass and bone move through it, devouring everything in their path. Above the lake, bloodthirsters fight dragons made from pure and solid blood. Those who fly too close to the surface risk being snatched from the air. The lake itself is so hungry for carnage that it reaches for them. Across its surface, rising waves take the shape of warriors. They clash with one another and fall back into the lake. Their battles end in a rain of scattered blood, only to become part of the surface again. On the far shore of the Lake of Slaughter, the ground is covered with skulls. There are so many that whatever foundation lies below them cannot be touched. The skulls stretch for kilometers from the shore toward a distant black wall. That wall is the outer wall of Khorne's brass citadel. Upon it stand guardian demons with eyes as sharp as their fangs and swords. They watch for intruders and remain ready to defend their master to the last. Inside the walls, thousands of flesh hounds patrol the skullyard. They search by scent for the blood of anyone who would dare attempt incursion. In the skies between the outer walls and inner keep, elite bloodthirsters listen for invasion on the wind. Few forces ever gather enough strength to assault the brass fortress. Its guardians deter almost all of Khorne's rivals from even making the attempt. When such an assault begins, the Blood God's personal host answers with fury enough to threaten the space between realms. Khorne's brother Chaos Gods could gain much power by defeating the Blood God in its fortress. Yet the danger of counter-invasion is too great for such wars to be waged without dire cause. It is said that if Khorne rose from its throne and went to war, its favored blade would end them all in one sweep. Such an act would bring results that not even Sinch could predict. It is also said that Khorne once took up its sword in consuming rage and struck the ground. The blow split the land forever, and the sword became known by many names. Among those names are Warmaker and the End of All Things. The blade can lay waste to entire worlds with a single blow. Because of this, an uneasy balance remains between the ruinous powers. When Khorne destroys the invading armies of its brother gods, they do not answer with direct retribution. When the threat has ended, Khorne does not press its advantage. Instead, it returns to the inner sanctum and takes its place again upon the throne of skulls. In the very center of the brass citadel, beyond the bastion stair and the 8 iron pillars, Khorne watches from the throne of skulls. From that seat, the god commands its blood legions and mortal servants. They are sent to bring war to the distant corners of the galaxy. Every victory Khorne witnesses leaves it thirsting for more blood. With every defeat, the god takes the blood of a failed champion. That blood is added to the rivers of its realm. Blood will belong to Khorne, even when it must be taken from its own minions. Around the throne of skulls rises a mound of bone that holds the god aloft. Khorneate chaos champions and fallen enemies alike have added to that mass. If those skulls could speak, some would tell stories from before the long war against the corpse emperor of the Imperium. They would speak of a time when the Primarch Angron had not yet sworn his oath to the Blood God. Others would recall grave mistakes that led entire species beneath the axes of berserkers. Closest to Khorne are the skulls of its favored champions. They died in service after hundreds of violent campaigns. Across eternity, those skulls would call out again with the cry, "Blood for the Blood God." Tuska, the Daemon-Killa, is the orc warlord who leads an orc war in eternal battle before the brass Citadel. This place is the heart of Khorne's domain in the realm of chaos. The orc invaders first drew the blood god's gaze when they plunged into the eye of terror. They entered that warp in real space with the aid of many weird boys. Their search was simple, because they wanted fresh carnage. Tuska had already left his mark on the eye by attacking several daemon worlds devoted to Khorne's rivals. The dangerously unhinged warlord called himself the Daemon-Killa. His horde seemed unstoppable until it crash-landed on a flesh planet. That world belonged to a mighty Daemon prince named the Blood Prince, who stood high in Khorne's favor. The Blood Prince and his minions eventually slew the greenskin horde to the last orc. Yet Khorne took such joy in the murderous spectacle that the crusade rose again at the next dawn. The same history repeated again and again. The orcs fought tooth and nail without showing surrender or despair. Their limitless battle lust impressed the blood god so deeply that he brought them into his own domain. In the shadow of the brass Citadel, elite bloodletter generals fight the Daemon-Killa's undying greenskin horde each day. With every cycle, dying greenskins release great clouds of fungal spores. These spores take root and flourish in the blood-stained foothills of the osseous peaks. More orcs are born, grow to maturity, and charge back into battle once more. Such endless cycles of bloodshed are deeply pleasing to the blood god. For Khorne, the one true constant in the galaxy is endless war. The god himself has made sure that this constant endures. The 8 burning books of Khorne are remembered as grim things, bound in brass and marked with fresh blood. They are said to decree the 8 unholy aspects of the blood god and to name its foremost demons. Sorcerers search for these grimoires, and even the Inquisition is drawn toward the knowledge hidden in them. A daemon's true name is believed to make it servile to mortal command, so such knowledge is sought with care. Yet, acquiring one of the burning books is not easily done, because each book is scattered across existence. Their presence feels distant and difficult to reach, like something known only through dangerous longing. Among all the daemons of chaos, the demons of Khorne resemble the terrible shapes found in human legends and myths. Their horns and fangs, their blood-red hides, and their blazing eyes show their murderous intent, with little room for doubt. Their ferocity is remembered as something truly matchless, and only a fool would try to bargain with them unprepared. Those who deal with the demons of Khorne need blood sacrifices close at hand, because such offerings may be traded for their own lives. If a petitioner can avoid death for long enough, the bargain itself is not difficult to make. These ravening beings want only to be unleashed on a victim, any victim, and they rush into battle with fierce joy at the first chance. Such cohorts are dangerous allies because they may turn on anyone who comes within their reach. For many who summon them, that danger still serves their purpose very well. Bloodletters form the main rank and file of the Blood God's legions. They are ugly horned humanoids with cloven hooves, carrying blood-drinking battle axes or swords known as hellblades. Those hellblades are forged at the foot of the Throne of Skulls. The Bloodletters wear armor of demonic brass, and in battle they fall into horrific frenzies of bloody slaughter. A Bloodcrusher joins a Bloodletter rider with a Juggernaut steed, forming the shock cavalry of Khorne's demonic blood legions. These steeds are neither simple beasts nor machines, but demonic fusions of both. They are massive creatures with brass flesh, iron sinews, and blood that burns like fire. Their breath is fear, their steps are thunder, and their roars carry the fury of 1,000 dead souls. The Juggernauts are said to be among the most brutal of the Blood God's demons. They reflect their creator's aggression, becoming unstoppable force in mindless violence made manifest. All of Khorne's servants are dangerous in the way only demons can be. Yet the heralds of Khorne stand above the faceless ranks, chosen to lead the blood legions into slaughter. They are emissaries of death and terrible to behold in battle. Few mortals can match their martial prowess, and only Khorne's dread bloodthirsters are more deadly. The heralds are more than strong opponents on the battlefield. They are icons of Khorne and animate, and their presence urges nearby demons toward even greater acts of bloodshed. Fleshhounds are monstrous and ferocious creatures with a vague canine shape. They are known for their supernatural ability to track the prey they have chosen. Around them are enchanted collars called Collars of Khorne. These collars make them highly resistant to sorceress or psychic influence. Juggernauts are massive demonic steeds made from living metal. They have blood of liquid fire, and each one is like a small daemon engine. Their form blends daemon and hell-forged machine, vaguely resembling a hulking armored bull. According to legend, each beast begins in the furnaces at the base of Khorne's rage. These mounts are generally gifted to favored champions of Khorne. In that role, they carry their riders with the weight and force of living war. Bloodthirsters are the greater demons of Khorne, and among all demons they most closely resemble familiar mythological or religious demons. They have human bodies, cloven hooves instead of feet, leathery bat-like wings, and horned heads that may seem dog-like or humanoid. In battle, they wield both a whip and a massive two-headed battle axe. As the greatest manifestation of the god of war, a dreaded bloodthirster is among the most powerful warriors found on any battlefield. The Daemon Princes of Khorne are also called the favored of the Blood God, Blood Princes, and Bone Lords. Not all of these demonic servants began as beings of everlasting chaos. Some once moved through the material universe as living creatures of weak and limited flesh. They sought something greater, offering themselves to Khorne for unmatched strength and limitless martial power. A mortal who walks this path knows that every step may be the last. Service to the capricious blood god is filled with constant danger, and many champions displease their master along the way. Those failures may end their relatively sane days as mindless chaos spawn. In rare cases, a chaos champion wins victory through thousands of battles and catches the more favorable eye of the master they serve. For those few, mortal life is gladly exchanged for elevation into demonhood. Such demon princes are rewarded because they remained unwavering in devotion and because they achieved all their lord demanded. Among the Chaos Gods, Khorne's demands are the easiest to understand. Kill, keep the blood flowing, and make war upon all things. These simple tenets speak to the basic nature of creatures, giving the need for conflict a path of expression. Khorne does not care whether his champions began as Hive City scum or as space marines. If they give him an unending flow of blood, they may earn the rewards he grants. For his servants, elevation to demonhood is the greatest reward of all. Angron, the Red Angel, is the Daemon Primarch of the World Eater's Traitor Legion. He fell into the service of Khorne during the bloody days of the Horus Heresy. Earlier in the 41st millennium, Angron last united his legion and invaded real space during the First War for Armageddon. His name remains tied to that return from the realm beyond. Kabanda is a bloodthirster, recognized among the most powerful and most feared servants of the Blood God. During the Horus Heresy, he became the lasting nemesis of Sanguinius and his 9th Legion. He played that role during the Cygnus campaign and later at the Siege of Terra after the Great Rift formed in 41st millennium. He was also responsible for destroying most of Tyranid High Fleet Leviathan. That destruction came during the devastation of Baal, and it saved the Blood Angels chapter of the Adeptus Astartes from annihilation. They were his most hated foes, and Kabanda wanted only himself to bring the sons of Sanguinius to final ruin. Khorneate is the three-headed flesh hound that prowls Khorne's grand throne room. That throne room lies in the brass citadel within the Blood God's domain. He never sleeps, and like the Blood God's vengeance, Khorneate remains ever watchful. He searches the shadows for intruders and interlopers or gnaws bones discarded from the skull throne. At times, he stalks bloodletters and furies through the vaulted hall. As the physical form of Khorne's vengeance, he is the hunter chosen to seek those who have broken the warrior creed. He is also sent against those who have insulted Khorne's colossal pride. The choice is fitting because Khorneate is ruthless and implacable, and can follow a blood scent across all space and time. Skarbrand, the Exiled One, is a bloodthirster, and so he is wrath incarnate. He's murderous violence loosed from the realm of chaos, reaping skulls and souls for his lord in rage. Once, Skarbrand was the greatest of Khorne's generals. He was the mightiest of all bloodthirsters, until the machinations of Sinch stoked his fury beyond control. In that frenzy, Skarbrand dared to strike at the Blood God himself. For this betrayal, Khorne exiled him from the Blood God's domain for all time. Now frustrated by exile, Skarbrand has begun a campaign of bloodshed greater than any he pursued before. He serves Khorne more loyally than ever, yet the Lord of Skulls has no mercy in his heart. Skarbrand is no closer to returning to his home. Even the anointed Daemon hunters of the Imperium fear him when he manifests in the Materium. The Grey Knights possess arcane war gear and psychic mastery to vanquish the demons of chaos. Against a being as powerful as Skarbrand, only terminal violence can halt the unending rampage. Skulltaker is an infamous demonic servant of Khorne, serving as the Blood God's immortal champion. He is the strongest of all Khorne's bloodletters. When he is not campaigning, Skulltaker roams the realm of chaos at will. He rides his mighty juggernaut, Kultiran, and appears before the fortresses and strongholds of the other chaos gods. There he bellows challenge after challenge at the greatest warrior within. He continues until one of them is foolish enough to meet him in single combat. Of all the demonic armies of the Chaos Gods, Khorne's blood legions are the most martial. They are savage and unrestrained, yet they still occupy a strict hierarchy based on sheer might. Khorne believes the strongest of his followers should dominate. That belief has become a simple and efficient way of ordering his armies. Through endless war, the Blood God's legions have carved out the largest domain in the Immaterium. In the brutal press of melee, Khorne's forces are unmatched by those of any other god. The strength and ferocity of each daemon decide its rank in the armies of the Blood God. Highest among them are the Bloodthirsters, clad in Baroque armor and bearing terrible brass axes and whips. Each Bloodthirster is a demigod of war. If they were warriors and nothing more, they would already be terrifying enough to the foes of Khorne. But the Blood God's enemies are not so fortunate. Bloodthirsters also lead the Lord of Skull's blood legions on the battlefield, barking guttural orders to the lesser demons around them. They prove dominance and dedication by defeating the mightiest enemy combatants. Among Khorne's servants, they are figures of awe, often drawing demonic champions into their entourages. Each blood legion is divided into 8 cohorts. Each cohort is made of 8 packs of demons, led by a herald of Khorne or by a daemon prince. The exact makeup of these cohorts depends on the type of blood legion they belong to. Auxiliary formations and creatures may also fight beside them, changing the shape of their war. The Red Tide legions are built around bloodletter cohorts. These cohorts overrun the foe with waves of infantry attacks, leaving death on such a scale that carrion feeding furies often follow. The Hellfire legions are siege specialists, and they prefer to fight the foe at range. They go to war in the shadow of skull cannons, soul grinders, and the huge daemon engines known as Lords of Skulls. The Brazen Thunder legions are the most mobile of Khorne's armies. The ground shakes beneath their blood thrones and blood crushers as fleshhound packs chase any who try to flee. Only Khorne himself knows exactly how many types of blood legion exist. At full strength, each blood legion is usually formed from 8 cohorts, and each cohort is composed of 8 packs of Khorneate demons. These formations may change for many reasons. Most often, they shift through added auxiliaries or through an increase or decrease of warp energies on the battlefield. Among the minions of Khorne, it is not unusual for one cohort to subjugate the daemon packs of another. They may force those packs to their side through savage and sometimes ritualized infighting. And so the Blood God does not need to wait for some rare offering or for some secret rite performed beneath a forgotten moon, because the thing that feeds Khorne is older and simpler than any temple, any scripture, or any oath sworn by the followers of the ruinous powers. It is there when a hand closes into a fist, when anger overcomes restraint, when jealousy becomes hatred, and when one being decides that another no longer has the strength to keep what it possesses. This is why Khorne is so difficult to separate from the life of the galaxy, because its power does not come only from warriors who knowingly kneel before the Blood God, or from champions who pile skulls in its name. It also rises from every conflict that carries violence within it, from the smallest clash between bitter rivals to the vast world-breaking wars that have shaped the fate of empires, and even to the terrible battles of the Horus Heresy, where the rage of gods and mortals alike burned across the stars. From the Skull Throne, beyond the fragile illusion of the reality where mortal creatures live and die, Khorne watches this endless pattern repeat itself. Civilizations expand, resources are claimed, borders are challenged, brothers grow envious of brothers, and those who believe themselves strong reach out to take from those who cannot defend what they hold. In every age and among every intelligent species, conflict finds a way to return, wearing many different faces, but always carrying the same ancient truth beneath it. The Blood God does not need to dress that truth in honeyed promises, and it does not need the delicate plots of subtler powers, because anger is already close to the surface of even the most civilized soul. A protector may raise a weapon to defend the helpless, a liberator may strike against a tyrant, and a starving people may fight because survival leaves them no gentler choice. But wherever the weapon falls, wherever the wound opens, and wherever blood is spilled, Khorne receives its portion. That is the horror of the Blood God. It is not merely the god of battlefields, berserkers, and screaming slaughter, but of conflict pushed to its most violent extreme, until every grievance becomes a wound, every rivalry becomes a killing ground, and every act of domination becomes another offering cast down into its raging depths. The mighty rise, the weak fall, and somewhere in that brutal exchange, the laughter of Khorne rolls outward from the throne of skulls. And when one war ends, another begins. When one battlefield falls silent, another heart begins to burn. As long as mortals can hate, envy, hunger, defend, conquer, and kill, the Blood God is never truly distant, because wherever blood flows, Khorne is fed, and wherever conflict endures, Khorne endures with it.